Hi everyone, Big Mike here. It's time for another tutorial. Today we are covering what is currently one of the best-selling RPGs on the market. In fact, it might even be the most best-selling RPG of all time. It's critically praised, frequently argued about by fans, and I'm going to take you through it. This is 5th edition. 5th edition is essentially the culmination of Wizards of the Coast's dream of making a simplified D&D rule system. While some have argued that it is a tribute to the entire history of D&D, that's not really true. It is by far the most accessible iteration of D&D from a role-playing perspective. Some can argue that 4th edition is more accessible from a tabletop or pure mechanic-based system, but then you have a lot of people arguing about 4th edition, so let's just not go down that rabbit hole. Much like all permutations of D&D 3.0, 5th edition uses a single D20 for all pass or fail rolls. You have to hit the target number or exceed it by rolling 1 D20 and adding that result to any modifiers you have, be they from your own innate stats, skills, or just circumstances or abilities there within. And naturally, like every other iteration of the D20 system, you have the 6 ability scores: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. The idea is, as always, these are your innate abilities, your innate physical attributes. And each numerical value of these stats has a modifier associated with it. And we've covered it many times, but we'll cover it again. A flat 10 represents being a basic, ordinary human being and neither being great nor terrible within that ability. So let's say you have a 10 in strength, you are just an average human, you have a modifier to all your dice rolls of 0, and that goes up accordingly depending on how strong or weak you are or in any particular attribute. It's just the same as it's always been. And that's really odd considering how much they've already simplified the D20 system. You think they would have just gotten rid of ability scores altogether and just let you point by modifiers and call it a day. Now, here's where we differ from every other iteration of the D20 system on the planet. Rather than using skill points that you add to your ability score modifier for your unique skills, for all of your skills in 5th edition, you automatically add the modifier for the appropriate ability score. That's the same as it's always been. But rather than putting in individual skill points and saying where your character is better or less quality in, you add something else, which I've gotten into so many fights over: proficiency. The idea is that as your character levels, regardless of the class, you get the same proficiency bonus. Now this, depending on your class and background, is added to different skills, and these can be your non-combat skills or your weapon combat skills, depending. So that's why it means when you say you have proficiency in something, that proficiency modifier is added. It's the same for everyone, regardless of class or level. It's just that flat number. You always have it. There's also something called advantage and disadvantage. The idea is that if your character is in an advantageous situation, be it determined by powers or abilities you have or GM fiat, depending, you will be able to roll 2d20, and if you have advantage, you take the better result of the 2 dice rolls. If you have disadvantage, you'll roll the same 2d20, but you will take the lesser result. And how there aren't more fights about this is beyond me. Apart from that, most of the classes and races have add-on options like archetypes or racial traits to help make characters more distinct. The idea is that you can have 2 different characters of the same race or class, hopefully not both, that are distinct enough that they complement what the group needs. Lastly, there are backgrounds, which are there to streamline down character creation. Most give you additional skills that you'll gain your proficiency bonus added to them, as well as extra equipment and details from your history that help you round out your character. These are typically shown up on your character sheet as personality traits, ideals, flaws, and bonds. It's a pure role-playing thing, though, those particular 4 categories on the sheet, and as far as I can tell, it has no strong mechanical benefit apart from what you argue at the table, so some players, as I've come to understand, just leave those blank and let them fill in as they go along their journey. Of course, because this is a combat-based game, you have hit points, and those are determined by your hit dice At first level, all you get is the maximum value of your hit dice for your class and your Constitution modifier. And every other level, you just roll your hit dice. Fuck me, is that right? There's also a section on your character sheet called Passive Perception, which is a perception that you always have. You don't have to roll for it. And the Game Master will, whenever you go into a new situation where perception is required, just ask what your passive perception is. And you'll give them that number, and they will say whether or not you see something, and then you can roll for it. It's just a default for much more high perception characters, just to avoid the chance of missing something. Initiative is very simple. You make a dex check by rolling 1d20, adding your dex modifier. Highest goes first in the initiative order. When it's your turn, you roll to hit with your weapon, you use your strength modifier for melee, dex for range, and hopefully you're using a weapon which you have proficiency with. Otherwise, you won't be making the most out of hitting something. Likewise, you have to hit your target's armor class, which is usually their strength and their dex, plus whatever armor they're wearing and the modifier from that. And they should have proficiency with it so that it actually works. If you get a 1 on your dice roll, it automatically counts as a miss, regardless of your modifiers. If you naturally get a 20, it always counts as a hit. In fact, it's called a critical hit, and it hits no matter what, regardless of whether or not your modifiers would make up the difference to hit something. You don't have to roll to confirm like you do with other systems. You get that natural 20, it's still a critical hit, and it always hits. Then, if you successfully hit, you roll your weapon's damage dice and just add the ability modifier to the damage. Now, here's the thing. If the attack is a critical hit, you roll the weapon's damage dice twice. You don't add the modifiers twice like you do in most other systems, but any damage dice you roll them again a second time, total up the result, and then add any modifiers that apply. Now, if you hit 0 hit points, you do not die. You can actually keep taking damage, and these count as negative hit points. And you can actually take a fair amount, up to and equal to your total HP. So let's say you have 13 HP, and you take negative 10 damage. You are still alive, but you're in critical condition. If you exceed your negative 13 hit points, you die. Just completely. And there are some attacks from very powerful enemies that can do that to you. However, if you are 0 or past that, you are unconscious. And you enter into the world of death saves, which is by far the only part of 5th edition which is complete nonsense. The idea is you keep rolling d20s until you succeed at your death save via Constitution roll 3 times. If you fail 3 times, it just gets worse and worse until you die. It is by far the only stupid, I would argue, part of 5th edition. So it's quite likely your Game Master might just house rule it to a simpler variant, because it's just really cumbersome. And that's 5th edition, the biggest RPG today. If you want more information on it, there are countless guides online, as well as so much third-party add-on material for 5th edition that it's frankly dizzying, and any of it can be modularly put in to modify or improve your game. If you want, you can go online. There's countless guides to help you optimize or build the character you want to get the results you want from both a role-playing and a mechanical perspective. But for the rest of you who just want to enjoy us playing it, we'll see you next time. These classes will instead have different additional abilities or different add-on abilities, and I'm just going to keep saying abilities until it loses all meaning, because I am fighting so much head cold. I have taken no medication today. I am on a wild ride to nowhere. Here we go. I run this entire brand. We're all fucked. It's figured out with your Game Master. So many default things. Mike, come on, you can do it straight. I don't mean straight as in heterosexual. I just mean without doing the... Let's get back to it. There's also a little table on your sheet called passive... You make a straight D20 roll and add your dex modifier to determine initiative. Highest goes first. Super simple. It's just all there is to it. I don't even know why we're doing this tutorial. I don't know why anyone would do a tutorial on 5th edition. Especially with the white screen behind them, doing nothing else other than talking about 5th edition's book when it's by far the easiest bloody system. If you get a natural 20 on your dice roll, that counts as a critical hit. I will cover what the damage output of that is in a couple of seconds. I don't even know why I'm differentiating that. That's why this line is getting redone. Why am I even doing a tutorial for 5th? Everyone knows 5th. It's outselling everything. I feel like an idiot. It doesn't need a tutorial. It's 5th. Bessem does. I didn't feel this for Bessem. It's just so easy. Who does a tutorial on 5th? I do, because I'm a completionist. Criminy. This is gonna have the most outtakes because I'm ranting the whole way. Hating myself, apparently. I'm glad you guys like me. I hope you still like me. If you roll a 1, I'm always ranting. It's just all these rants in me. Why are they coming out in 5th ed? Because there's nothing. I don't have to focus for this. This takes none of the normal focus of getting it right, because you all know 5th. What am I doing? Would you like me to spoil something from the canon? Sure. Asmodeus is up to something. What, you might ask? It has to do with Guts from Berserk. Just putting that out there. A little something for those of you who watch the tutorial. There you go. Then